Hello, hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I am actually going to start a new sort of series of videos that I'm going to do, probably not once a month, but once every couple of months, called Amateur Hour. So, what is Amateur Hour, you may ask? It is where I am going to attempt to learn or develop or get better at some sort of craft. So, if you know me, if you followed me for a while, you know that I'm a very crafty gal in that I love all things fiber arts. I like to crochet, knit, macrame, all of the things. Trying to think of other things. I want to learn how to sew really bad. I like to weave, all these things. There's not enough hours in the day, honestly. This series is going to be me trying to either take a deeper dive into certain things or learn something new altogether. So, along with this, I have been kind of have a new life update in that I am doing back and forth at my grandparents right now from Salina to Lawrence. So, one of the things that I am finding here quite a bit is paper products. So, in particular, magazines, books, which books are, you do a lot with books, but magazines, phone books, that's the one we're going to focus on today is phone books. So I wanted to try my hand at maybe processing some of these things in a different way, particularly the phone books, because I don't actually think I didn't see phone books on the list of things that were taken by the recycling center. And phone books aren't really created anymore. Most of the ones that I have here are pretty old, like 10 plus years old. And the paper is really, really thin. It's a different type of paper than like a magazine paper. And again, they're just like whole huge books of things that like I don't want to go to the trash for sure. If they take them at the recycling center, I'm gonna ask when I go there because I didn't see it on the website. So I'm gonna ask when I go there whether they take phone books or not. But in the meantime, I thought I might try my hand at a new craft, which is making paper beads. So I have actually already been doing this before I had this idea to do, the amateur hour videos. I had been working on this actually the last two times that I've been in Salina. It's kind of been my little like side project. I always love to have like, a little crafty thing going on. So I've actually been making these beads already. So I'll show you kind of my steps that I've gone through so far. Okay, let me just show you. In the end, this is one of the beads that I have made. I have gotten kind of a good process going on this, but I'll show you some of the beginning stuff. The reason why I wanted to make them so big is because my hope is to use, if you've seen some of my other videos, t-shirt yarn and make macrame plant hangers with these as the beads in those macrame plant hangers. So trying to figure out ways to, make new things that can have a longer lifespan, not just end up in a landfill or in a recycling center, that sort of thing. Bring people more joy with what they are and give things a new life and also get to like create and be crafty along the way. That's my thing is like sometimes I think about what I like would refer to myself as because I think I should refer to myself more as like an artist. And while I do think that a lot of the things that I do are artistic and I think that sometimes I maybe sell myself a little short with saying that I'm more of like a crafter than an artist is because I do prefer functional art. I prefer to create myself functional art in that it's something that can be used. So that's why I like to knit and crochet and weave because you're like creating a product. Um and I don't know if that's just like my capitalist brain a little bit too much or if like I like to think that it's more about the fact that I like things to be pretty and functional. I like art. I do enjoy art. Like I'm a human being, I enjoy art. I love a good museum. You can see behind me, my grandparents have a ton of amazing art. I've never been as inclined to do something that is like drawing or painting or anything like that. I have taken some of those classes. I've really enjoyed them. Really enjoyed ceramics. That was another thing. That's another thing I would love to get into later in my life once I have like more space and like when my life isn't so like doing right now I'm going back and forth week to week. I'm trying to move to Sweden in the next year. Like I don't have time to like create a pottery studio. But okay, so let's dive into it. So I looked up some things on YouTube about how to make paper beads, all that sort of thing. Most of them have you using something a lot smaller than this. I chose to use the biggest marker that I could find to see how big I could make the hole here. I don't actually even know if this is going to be big enough. We'll have to see once I get to doing the actual macrame project. The only thing, another reason why I wanted to try this craft is because it has a really low like barrier to entry, right? Like you just have to have some sort of paper product and then some just like white school glue, whatever you're going to wrap the thing around, and then yeah, the paper product. I've made it a little bit more complicated or a little bit more like streamlined or like added a few other things that I'll show you in a second that just make it a lot easier to do the craft. Also, you need scissors as well to cut the paper. So my the very first thing that I did was these. So this was actually one piece of paper, like it was one piece of paper, and I realized as I was wrapping it around, I was like, wow, that is way too thick. Like I don't need a bead this big. So then I only did one little strip of paper from the phone book, and I ended up cutting it in half. So that was my very first, like literally the very first thing that I did, and I was like, oh, well, that's not quite right. So then I tried again. This is the second one that I did. And so that one looks a little bit better, right? But the thing was is that this, I don't know if you can tell, but this came from strips of paper that I cut without any like guide or marking. I just like cut, this is a piece of the phone book paper. I just like cut it in strips like based on vibes. And so what I found was that very quickly it was obvious that you wanted to make sure that you had the biggest pieces, like the widest pieces on the bottom, and the skinniest pieces, like, you know, on top of the wider pieces. And so this one started to get a little funky because I wasn't so good about doing that. So you can't see it very well, but there's just like the spacing is not right or whatever, right? So then I made another one and I was feeling really good about it and starting it. And then I got a little ahead of myself and I started putting too much glue on and like not waiting for the glue to dry in between each strip and whatever. And so it turned out all like curly Q. Like, again, I don't know if you can really see here, but it's just kind of like wavy and ripply. So then I made my last one before measuring strips. This one I was the most careful in terms of using the glue and trying really, really hard to put the strips that I had in order of widest to smallest. But as you can see here, you can see this is more of a gradient, like, you know, widest down here and then whatever. And then over here, it's kind of just like, whoop, whoop. So this is just a technique thing. This was just me maybe not being careful enough about getting everything in the middle. And also, again, these strips weren't measured. So it was just like my guesstimate, like based on my like eyesight, which one's thinner, which one's thicker or wider or skinnier or whatever. And so that one turned out a little bit better, got the technique down a little bit better, but still wasn't exactly what I was going for. So then I went ahead and made myself some little cardboard rulers. But if you can see on the top here, so I did 1-inch strips, 3/4-inch strips, and 1/2-inch strips. So those end up looking like this. These are the this is the 3/4-inch strips, and this is a 1/2-inch strip. I don't have any 1-inch strips cut out right now. But then that allowed me to get a lot more consistency with how I made the beads here. So then the next thing that I'm going to do now and show you guys sort of my process as much as is interesting to see is that I have been using, again, these really thin strips that come from a very classic style phone book. So one like this. But then I found this magazine. This one has a bunch of different colors. And so I thought it would be interesting to make some strips out of this. And this is, I will say, this is more like magazine paper. And most of the time when people make paper beads, they make them out of magazine paper. So I thought that I would use this situation because even though the colors don't go all the way across, some of them have more colorful pages and stuff versus just the like beige, you know, with text, this sort of situation. So I thought it would be fun to try out something like this where also these edge strips, like when I use the edge strips, I can put those as the last strip on so that that is like the main color for that bead. And I thought that might be an interesting thing to try out, especially with the macrame plant hangers. It might be fun to have some different colors and be able to like mix and match and be able to just see what happens with that. Again, this is me being very, very much an amateur at this, seeing what I can do, seeing what I can create with spending very, very little money. The only thing I had to buy for this project was this glue that cost me, I think, $1.25. And then all the paper and stuff and the scissors, all the other stuff I already had. I made the cardboard things I made from a piece of scrap cardboard. So this is a very, very inexpensive project using stuff that people typically have around the house. And you can use any size thing to make, like to put the bead on. And you'll see how I, actually here. So like you can see, like that's what happens is like you build it around that. You can use any size thing. You could use a pin that size. You could use whatever. You can also add like a finish to these, and I might try that out at some point in this project. But again, that would be another thing I would have to buy. So I'm going to wait until one, I see whether I like the vibe of how it looks as a finished product and decide if I want to spend money on getting something else for it. And also whether I get bored of this craft in, a month, because I don't like to buy things for crafts that I don't plan to do long term. So next thing that you're going to see from me in this video is I'm going to try to take you through like the exact process of how I measure and how I cut everything up and all of that. Okay, so the first step is done, where I went ahead and ripped out all the pages that had the really nice vibrant colors that I liked, and then I went ahead and even just cut them down to, as you can see, like cut them in half essentially to really just get those parts that had these lovely colors. Look at all these. They're so nice. Okay, so the next step is going to be going through and cutting all of the strips. I'll show you guys. I'm going to mark these up the way that I do before I cut them and just show you what that looks like real quick. Okay, so here you can see what I do. I take this little red pencil and just mark on both the top and the bottom where I need to cut. This last little strip is not quite a full inch, so I will make sure to put that to the side. So I'm really only going to get a few strips out of these pages, but that's okay. So also, I kind of just freehand the cuts, I'm going to be honest. I just kind of look at it and try to line up the bottom and the top. If I continue to do this craft, I will probably bring one of my paper cutters. I have at least one. There might be one here too. I'm not sure. But I do know it would be a lot easier to do with a paper cutter where you're just and like you don't even have to mark it. You can just, there's usually rulers on those. But for whatever reason, I've just been doing it this way and it's been working for me just fine. So I haven't felt the need to go and look for something like that or bring one of my paper cutters from Lawrence. And actually, I'm like kind of surprised by how decently I do tend to cut these. It's not like perfect, but they're surprisingly straight. I'm just so skilled like that. Yeah, see, they kind of end up pretty much all the same width. These are the 1-inch strips. I am going to go ahead and cut, I only have 3 of these green ones. So I guess the question is, do I do a bead with only this amount, or do I cut these all into 1 inch and then do other colors to do the other ones? I'm leaning towards cutting these into 1-inch strips and then cutting another color, another couple of colors, and making them more of a rainbow situation. I think I'm going to try that out for the first one. If I hate it, then that'll be a bummer because I'll have wasted some of these nice, pretty sheets of paper. But whatever, that's the price of the game. Okay, so I am done cutting the strips for this project. So I've got my 1-inch strips that are this nice like greenish tealish color. And then I have my 3/4-inch strips, which these probably look the same. I feel like these probably look the same on camera. They're slightly different in real life. I don't know if I'm going to love, I'm not really super happy with my decision to do it this way. So we'll see how it turns out, because then we have this lovely blue color for the very last little bit of it. And I'm hoping on the bead, you'll be able to tell the difference between the greens. We'll see. I kind of wish I had made this color, like the middle color, and this color, the last color, but I started cutting and got through too much to change it because, this is also just the first one and the first experiment, which I will say I'm also probably going to leave this here for tonight because it's getting dark and I'm getting sleepy and I want to go lay in my bed. So tomorrow you'll see me in a different outfit in the light of day, putting these all together into an actual bead, and we'll see how that goes. It's the next day, as you could probably tell from the shift in lighting and all of that, and I'm ready to get into it. So I'm going to attempt to do this on camera. We'll see how it goes. If you get the, actually, also, I don't know if you guys just saw that, but I just flicked off the like dried part of this. When I went to open this glue, I didn't realize that there was like a stopper in here. You can see how much is gone. I didn't realize that there was a stopper in there. So I was like squeezing it and I was like, what is happening? Why is this not working? Why is this not working? Blah, blah, blah. And I was squeezing it, squeezing it. And then I was like, oh, maybe there's a stopper. And I turned this. And because of all the pressure buildup, the second that the stopper had the ability to like leave, it just went boom and just shot across the whole table. So that was fun to clean up. Not. But yeah, okay, so we have our guy here. All of these look pretty, the 1-inch ones are all always closest to the same. So because I don't want this to get stuck on here, I'm not going to put any glue down first. So the first one is always the toughest because you do want to get it very tight, as tight as you can, and also like straight, like when you start to make the, like start to fold it on itself, it's kind of easier than you might think to end up going one way or the other. I've done this a few times, so I have a decent hold on it. But even see how, like, I don't know if you can see that, where it's like really easy to kind of slide over, but you want to try to make, especially these base ones, as straight as possible. So now when we get to this part, got just this little tab. I'm going to put a little bit of glue right there. A little bit, but enough that it like comes out, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if you can see, kind of, yeah, it comes out this way because we're going to smooth. Oh, okay, so this is magazine, more magazine-y type paper. What is a little bit tougher to glue down than the phone book paper, but it looks like that's working. Again, this is my first time doing this with this type of paper, so we'll see how it works. And then you want to wait until it definitely gets like translucent and tacky. And then you grab your next piece and you just overlap it right there. And then that, stick it on there as best you can. Again, it's interesting working with this paper versus the phone book paper, because the phone book paper really sticks to itself really well. It's really thin, so it was like really easy to glue down because it just didn't take very much glue. But yeah, okay, so now we got the second one on there. It does have to be decently saturated with glue to stick down. I'm not too worried about getting glue like on the sides of this, like off of this, because once it dries, it's pretty easy to like pop off. Sorry, my dog she wants to go outside. Okay, cool. So now we're on to our third one. I'm gonna come back. See, look nice how that's like stuck on there. I'm gonna come back when I am done with the 1-inch strips. Okay, so I finished that. You can see the glue is still wet on there. Looking pretty cool. Now we're gonna move on to the 3/4 strips. I'm gonna try to end each one with this sort of stripy one, so I'll put that one at the end. And I also have to be careful about, like, there's spots where the color isn't quite as good, so I want to put those like under as underneath as possible, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's how it's looking right now, thickness wise. You can kind of see, and I'll come back when I'm done with 3/4. Okay, done with that second layer. I'm not loving the color combination here. I ended up doing like green and green first, but it's working okay, and it looks okay. Like, I like that it looks all green, but I almost wish I had more green to just continue the green versus now switching to this. Like, I'm wondering how this more like bluish green is gonna look and if I'm gonna like that or not. Also, you do end up with a finger that's kind of just covered in glue that you kind of just have to hold on to until you're ready to, scrape it all off. It's not hard to get off. It's actually kind of satisfying to peel it off at the end. Yeah, she's looking pretty good. Let's see if I can pop this off. Ah, yeah, see? Even though it was a little bit stuck, we kind of have truly the start to a nice little green bead that we're gonna add some blue to. So last part, this part always takes me the longest because there's the most amount of strips and they're the skinniest. So you do have to like be careful about, especially the first one that you place, trying to get it really, really centered and straight in the middle. You can see that I don't know if it's that I favor one side, but this side is so much like more even, like there's like the edge here and then the edge here, and then you see over here there's kind of like less of an even edge. I don't know why that happens, but it does tend to happen for me. So hopefully when we put on this last layer, it'll even it out a little bit, and I'll come back to you when I have that done. Okay, yay, I just finished, and I do really like how it looks. I do kind of like how it ended all blank. That's pretty cool. And it is a little bit, the inside is coming out a little bit on here. But I like it. I think she looks pretty good for a first attempt. It is really funny how you can see that here, like on the top, how much straighter than on that side. So that's something that I'll have to work on getting better at. And differences between this magazine paper and this phone book paper, they ended up relatively the same size, which is interesting because this paper is a lot thicker. But I'm glad that they turned out kind of the same size because that means that I could also maybe mix and match these in with those. I don't know, could be cool. And I definitely had to use a little bit more glue for this one. And for these ones, I had to be conscious of not using too much glue. And for these ones, I had to make sure that I was using enough glue. So, just little minute differences between the two. But overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out. And I'm excited to make some more and to put them on a macrame project and see how it turns out. Maybe eventually I might try to sell these to make a little money for my nonprofit, but right now I'm just focused on having fun. And I will say each of these beads does take me start to finish with all of the cutting of the strips and the laying things out and the gluing and everything does take me about an hour, like 45 minutes to do each bead. So that's an insanely long time, obviously, when you would need to do like at least 8 for a macrame project for it to be like worth it. It's not like a money making scheme by any means, but it is fun. And I do think that there's ways that I could streamline the process if I decided that I wanted to do it on a larger scale. But for now, the hand cutting and all of that definitely means that these take a minute. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my first episode of Amateur Hour with Megan HD, where I made a little paper bead and showed you guys a little bit of that process, talked to you about the process a little bit. I am excited to get this series started, excited to see where it takes me in terms of my crafting adventures, because that is just, crafting is something that I love to do. And I think it's so important for at least me, myself, and I to have something to do with my hands that isn't looking at a screen because, like I assume many of you, I feel as though I'm a little bit addicted to my phone. And so it is nice to be able to, take a breath, do something with my hands, create something, come up with something, use my brain, use my hands, hand eye coordination, and all of that. And I just think that it is so important. And I think that also when it comes to crafting, there's so many lost crafts in the world. Like there's so many things that we as humans have just lost to the generations, or there's only a few people that still do that skill, those sort of things. And so I do think it's really, really important to just, preserve ways of creating and to experiment with creating and to not be intimidated by the idea of it and to just be excited about doing something that creates something else, doing something that like puts your mind and body to work a little bit. So I hope you enjoyed. And I will catch you on the next one. Bye. Oh, also real quick, let's see how this peel goes, if it's satisfying at all. Try to wait for it to dry. Oh, yeah. It's not super like thick on the middle of my finger. Oh, this is a good one. It's thicker around the edges where it tends to accumulate versus in the middle where I tend to wipe it off. Okay, yeah. Started out a little bit better than it ended up. There we go. There's still a little bit on my finger that I'll just rub off like that. Aha.